So many people, entrepreneurs in particular, hope they can get to a point where they can have a lucrative exit of the company that they have built with passion, heart, blood, tears, and a lot of other things. A lot of aggravation, I might say, is probably into that mix too, because it's not easy. But to get to the point of an exit, whether somebody's buying your company, whether you've been acquired, whether you've been merged, this is a pinnacle few will reach. Well, my guest today, I think he's done it 4 times, but he can clarify that with me if I'm incorrect, because we're going to find out all about his journey and how he's done it. But here's the kicker. He's doing it for companies now. So he hasn't just done it for himself. He has spent his whole career since I met him. I think we calculated sometime back in 2002. He spent an entire career helping companies grow and get to the public markets. Please say hi to Seth Farbman.
Thank you very much. Great to be here, and really appreciate you having me on.
I am so glad you're here because I have really admired the trajectory of your career. Like I said, I think it was back in 2002, at some local spot here in New York City, we met and you and someone was with you. I'm trying to remember the whole thing. And you were talking about this idea you had that you were going to help companies create their filings more efficiently.
You have a great memory, and it's hard to believe that it's 25 years, right? I mean, we both feel as if it
Unlike when I look at my hair.
It's been a great journey, both for you, watching everything that you've accomplished. And we started the first company, my partner Shai and I together in 2002. And it's been a great ride ever since.
Now, you moved into, in a big way, the financial markets. Not an easy environment for anybody on any side. So explain to me what the draw was there and where you got this idea and vision for your first company.
I'd like to think that it was this great vision and like it just came down and I pursued it. But I find very often, and I'm sure you've seen this over the years, is that the greatest companies are born out of a pain or out of a need. Like there's some companies that are a luxury, a nice to have. And then there's some times where you're listening and you hear the same complaints and the same issues over and over. And you say, well, what if we could plug that up? What if we can improve that? And historically, that's how I've launched a company or taken a certain direction. So on the filing side, I used to be a securities attorney. Don't hold that against me. It's been 25 years.
Very important. We need those securities attorneys.
Absolutely. And I started to do SEC filings because I was a securities attorney and started in my basement. Slept on my couch for 6 months to give the appearance of being 24/7. If I heard the ding, my partner bought me pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I couldn't leave my desk. And that was the first part of the journey. By 2007, we had sold the company to PR Newswire. We had about 120 employees, not in my basement anymore at that point. We'd graduated.
It's really unbelievable. So how many years was that from start to exit?
On that particular one, it was 5 years.
Unbelievable. That's hustle.
It's hustle, but I don't take the credit. It's right place, right time. The market was ripe for a bit of a disruption, a new player to come into the scene. A lot of hustle, a lot of sleepless nights. A lot of times I wanted to quit, and I was like, we can't make payroll, or I don't want to work, sun up to sundown. Yeah. But we pushed through, and it was a great ride.
What would you tell somebody about how to keep going on those moments when you just say, again?
You have to believe in it. You have to want it. And there are times where you do have to throw in the towel. I mean, and there are companies that I've been involved with, like you had mentioned. Primarily, I'm in the financial services area, and that's true. But that doesn't mean that I haven't dipped my toe elsewhere. And I lost my shirt miserably. Like I've tried. Actually, right after we sold Vintage Filings, I was like, oh, I'm young and we had success and I can do anything. I tried a weight loss company, disaster. We tried an apparel company, disaster. And then it's like, you know what, I think I should stay within the 4 walls of corporate compliance. And then we got back into that industry.
It's so funny you say that because when I sold my company IRG, I wrote a health book with my brother, and it became a bestseller thanks to someone who lost 75 pounds, and my great PR team got it on the Today Show. But I really learned there's a difference between having a passion project and what you want to do for work. There can be a huge difference, and I think
true. It's funny because really, like along that line, so the company, the weight loss company that I had mentioned that was a disaster, it was called Weightview. And at the time, I was probably 50, 60 pounds heavier than I am now. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be great if, and this was before iPhones, before apps, crazy to think about, right? Before an app, was there ever a time period before apps? And I said, what if somebody could see what they look like if they lost that weight? And that would motivate them to get to that goal. So I had a team in India that was digitizing pictures manually.
Oh,
so
my
you would
gosh.
upload a picture, tell us how much weight you want to lose. We would digitize it, send it back to you and say, hey, this is what you looked like if you reached your goals. And we were on Rachel Ray and Oprah and Ellen, and it was tremendous because it was a free service. And then we turned on the revenue switch and we said, hey, we're charging you $4.99 and whatnot. And we heard crickets. So we shut down the company and it just, maybe it wasn't the right time, the right place. But the important lesson that I learned that, like similar to what you're saying, not every great idea is a moneymaker, right? It could be a passion project. It could make you feel good. It could make others feel good. It doesn't mean it's a business.
How do you think so you've worked with tons of businesses, helping them with their filings, helping them with their messaging, their marketing, getting them into, helping them raise money in all these different capacities. How do you think someone should look at whether they have a viable business or not?
That's a magic question. So I'm the first to admit, I do not know if something is going to be a hero or a zero.
I'm your seconding partner.
Yeah, we did it together.
Believe me, I have a lot of toilet paper.
If we did,
and stock certificates.
Exactly,
that
and if
was
we did,
convinced.
we would be investment bankers if we were in that industry. I always joke about the example when we started the filing business. We had a gentleman, a CEO from Israel, came in and said, "I've got the greatest product out there. I want to raise money." And he used us for the filings, but he's like, "I have this idea for like this syrup." And you put it into your seltzer, and it mixes it, blah, blah. And I was like, listen, it's a great idea. I hope you're very successful. I drink like coffee and Coke, and I don't want to start mixing like devices. Anyway, this was SodaStream, which is now $2 billion Israeli company. And that was my lesson. Like the ones that I think are going to be off the charts don't go anywhere, and vice versa. You never know.
Well, I very humbly admit to the fact that in the early or late 1990s, when I started my investor relations firm, and people were writing ideas on a piece of paper, and next thing they were getting funded, and I couldn't believe it. And I remember someone talking to me about Amazon, and me saying, "Wait a second. A company is going to sell books. They have named them after the Amazon, and people are complaining that the Amazon's getting the trees cut down. This company's going nowhere."
That's a great example.
Well, look at where they are.
That's a great example.
And
look at where we are. We're doing a podcast.
No, we are very lucky
It's
sitting
great.
in Manhattan
It's
Center.
great.
But seriously, it's such a great example. It's so difficult.
Yeah. But you have to, the companies that the CEOs that are passionate, they push through, they stick to it until you can't. But it's there's no magic formula to it, I don't think.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. The cross between passion and pushing through until you can't, or until you take that realistic look and say, you know what, quitting does not mean this is the end. It means I'm just kind of saying, this is as far as I can take it.
That's
and
right.
I don't see the vision anymore.
That's right. And so many companies have to pivot, and they pivot into something completely different, or even from a career standpoint, it's just like, hey, I've done this and now I want to try this and go in that direction. At the end of the day, I think that the core of running a business and storytelling is applicable to every company, regardless of what the business is. You know that. I mean, from the IR, PR world, it's all about storytelling.
Yeah.
It's all about it.
And it's so funny when you think of how different companies tell stories, and they either do it really well and they get you roped in and you're thinking, I can see this, I can picture it, or they don't, and it could still be the greatest company around.
It comes down to presentation very often, and you know this because you've helped so many companies craft that story. But when, we go to a lot of conferences, maybe 15 a year. And when you get
Wow.
up there and you see the CFO or the CEO, can't really, first of all, he's not excited and he's not passionate. And he gets up there and he just reads the financials that are on the screen right behind him that everybody could see anyway. That's not gonna excite people. It's not gonna motivate people. It's not gonna create this FOMO of like, oh, I better learn more about this company now, or I'm gonna miss out where they're headed in 6 months. So, I think that every company has to recognize, and a lot of people have said this is not mine, but they have to recognize that they're a media company first, and then they're a law firm, they're a widget company, they're a biotech, they're a pharma. But first, they're a media firm.
That is such a good point. I always dreaded the days after a quarterly financial call when the CEO and CFO would get on and read a script verbatim to what the press release said. No matter how many times you would say, please, let's not do this. Let's at least create a different script. No, we're down to the wire.
Right.
No, this is what we're going with. And the next day, everyone would say, why'd you ask me to log into that call?
Right.
It was just boring.
And
I could have read it in 5 minutes.
And you bring up a great point because, when you and I started, 20 plus years ago, that was the way of the world. You put out a press release, Pure Newswire, Globe Newswire, you hope somebody reads it and you call it a day. And now if anybody tried that, that would be the end. I mean, today it's roadshows and it's digital marketing and it's social and it's YouTube and it's clips and it's a full-on attack to get the word out there. So things are always changing in terms of how to come across and present that story.
It's so interesting how you mentioned social media and the changes that we've seen, just in our 25 years or whatever, 30 years, because they've been drastic, from social, just the internet. I mean, I another humiliating moment. True confessions here, everyone. I remember I had just started IRG. It's 1997. And a CEO calls me from South Carolina, North Carolina, Research Triangle, and says, Diane, there's this new thing called the internet. And there's this thing called email, and you can get it with AOL. And you just choose a name, and, then I can send you something in faster than a fax. You're going to be looking at it like, yeah, crazy. So he's like, so you just have to give me a name. So I hang up the phone. And at the time, my intern was a part-time DJ for WBLS. Okay. Well, she was going to school. So she's got this sexy voice, hey, my name's Jackie. And, but she was great at booking appointments. Everyone was like, who was that who booked that appointment with me? Everybody wanted to talk to Jackie. But I say to her, what should we call ourselves? And at the time we were working with biotech, and she goes, well, how about we say Bio Babes? I'm like,
that's
that
clever.
Was clever, stupid idea.
It's clever. It's different. Wow.
And there are people to this day that I'll run into and say, Diane, you cracked me up that was your first email address.
That's so funny.
Mortifying.
And people don't realize that when they create it, it's going to stick. I mean,
it's going to stick.
But it's going to stick. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think anyone could find that now. Right, then it became the Pro Team, whatever that meant. And finally, when I did IRG, everyone was like, then search started to come out with Google. And people would say, oh my gosh, what are you doing with search? You come to the top every time. I said, I named my company Investor Relations Group.
That's it. That's all it takes.
Filings.
Right. Vintage filings. It's and to fast forward today, like people don't even bother sometimes going to the websites. When you Google somebody, like, anybody who's listening to this, they Google you, they Google me. The first thing that comes up is probably their LinkedIn profile. And that's like the determining factor. Is this person real or not? If it's gray and generic and no information, they're like, I don't know if this company is real. I'm not saying that's the right way to judge a company or not, but practically speaking, because when you reference search, like if somebody has that dynamic LinkedIn profile or a lot of SEO or YouTube's like yourself, that is going to affect the presentation and the way people think of somebody. Is this person real? Is this company real? If they don't invest enough time in their own presentation of self and branding, then they're like, okay, well, I'll move on and find somebody else. And that's the way of the world that we live in.
What would you advise a CEO on that? at each stage of their growth.
Yeah, I think it's a question of balancing the company branding versus personal branding, and a lot of CEOs, not to their fault, but they're like, oh, I don't want to bother with that, or oh, LinkedIn is for resumes. But times are changing, and people are recognizing that social and digital marketing is really a way of cutting through the noise and distinguishing yourself. And also, people want to follow the journey, right? I mean, you are. I'm just going to say that you're interesting. People want to know about you. They want to know what are your passions, what are your hobbies, what are the things that you like to do, and they want to follow you and they want to get to know you. They don't want to just see you like signing a 10Q or 10K and don't really know anything about you. And I think that the key for these CEOs is they want to, or they should be showing people their authentic self. I'm not saying like, hey, here's a picture of me eating a sandwich, or here's my kid's 4-year-old birthday. Like, but stuff that people will be like, oh, you know what? This CEO, he's learning tennis. I'm learning tennis. Like maybe we have something in common. It humanizes them, and I think that's something people would benefit from.
I think that is a huge point. And because you mentioned two things. You said corporate branding and personal branding. And the personal branding is very interesting to differentiate because, like, when we would do public relations for someone, or a company would hire us and they'd say, well, we need the company and the media. I'd say, okay, let's just talk about Apple for a second. Yes, everyone wanted to know what the new iPhone was going to look like, or things like that. But what did they really want? They wanted to interview Steve Jobs at the time. He or Johnny Ivey. They wanted to interview a person. They wanted to understand, how was he thinking? How were these ideas originating? What was he going to be thinking next? How could he imagine the future?
Exactly.
And that is the personal branding side.
Yeah, I mean that's I think that the CEOs that are able to do that, and there is a balance. I mean, there are plenty of CEOs that be like, oh, well, I want to stay under the radar. I get that. Not everybody has to post 5 times a day, but if you're posting once or twice a week and you have an audience of 10, 15, 20,000 connections and followers, you're getting your ticker symbol, your message, your mission. I always joke that the ultimate goal is the water cooler test. Let's say somebody is, for example, in the insurance business, and it's Monday morning and everybody's standing around the water cooler and they're talking. They're like, oh yeah, I need this guy for D&O, or I need this guy for, cyber insurance. And then the other guy will be like, as he's filling up his water, like, oh, this guy John Doe, he's always posting good stuff and content. Why don't you check him out? And it flows organically. And I think that, at least for me personally, like an organic visibility is a lot better than sales, rah, rah, rah. And, that's the advice we try to give people.
I think that's really good advice. I mean, as we were saying earlier, when I pretty much had stayed off all social media for my entire time I owned large agencies.
Right.
It was just like I'd post something for my company, never something about me. And our kids were young. We were growing up with social media. And I was like, they're not going to be on it. This is not going to be happening. They're not getting iPhones. It was just like such resistance. And then when I started to post things, it was hilarious to me, just fascinating, who wouldn't comment, but would DM me. Or I'd get an email from someone I hadn't spoken to for 10 years. I just had this happen the other day. Somebody emailed me. I'll leave his name silent, because that's what I have to do most of the time, which is an interesting conundrum for me. When everyone in the world has you sign an NDA. Right. I want to work with you, but I need you to sign an NDA now before we even talk. No one can ever know I'm talking to you. Okay. But he sent me a note and he said, you remember you sent me years ago a measuring tape? He goes, well, the measuring tape just broke, but I figured today would be a good day to tell you I'm buying a new measuring tape, but I still read your blog every single day.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, exactly.
Small things.
So it's funny how you can blend those things. And I tell people all the time, don't worry if you're getting the likes or the comments, because there are plenty of people still reading it that don't want to share
completely
what they're.
And there may be, it's not only just like a sharing thing, but like there may be an intellectual or personal reason. Let's say, for example, there's a lawyer that posts something, and you really, really like his stuff, but you can't necessarily like it because your brother-in-law is a lawyer that's doing the same thing. And if you liked and commented, great, I love it, then your brother-in-law is going to call you and say, hey, why are you commenting and liking his stuff? Like, there's a lot of reasons. So when people say to me, like, what's the ROI of LinkedIn? It is not, like you're saying, it's not views per se, and it's not engagement, and it's not comments. Because if you want engagement, you can poke the bear. You can post controversial and stuff that's going to get people upset.
Say, is that really going to help you?
That's not helping business. No way. So I always say that the point is to just know that they're viewing it, even if they're not commenting, and that ROI means different things to different people. So if I ask you, Dan, what's the definition of happiness? You're going to have your definition of happiness. And if I ask somebody else, they're going to have their own definition. If I ask a lawyer versus a CFO versus a CEO, everybody's got a different view of what's going to make them happy. And with ROI, it's the same thing. So one CEO might be, his definition is he goes to a conference and 15 people walk up to him and say, I love what you're doing on LinkedIn. Can we find time to talk? How do you measure that?
It's priceless.
Yeah. And other people might be shareholders.
Especially since it was free to do.
All organic. I'm not advocating the paid LinkedIn banners and stuff like that. All organic.
Just put it out there.
That's what it's about.
Yeah. It's that proverbial expression, if you fling enough crap up against the wall, some of it's going to stick. And I always so found it was a great way to, when I first started, I focused on more personal stuff, and then I started to blend business stuff when I said, oh, gee, I do have an audience over on LinkedIn. Maybe I should post stuff over there and take the same philosophical bent on business issues, like how do you make a decision? Or different things that I'm always clearing my throat to. Let's make this the throat clearing mode.
Okay, I'm good.
But that transference of audiences from one place to the next, and you can have an audience over on X that is very, it's very different than the audience you might have on Instagram versus LinkedIn, and they're all very valuable and can all create the same results of free PR.
Absolutely. And it's not just capital markets type of focus. So, we may have a client that says he's in the med tech device with like a brain device. And he says, I don't need the capital. We just raised $40 million, but, I'd love to be connected to every neurosurgeon in the country. Or an esports company that wants to be connected to esports players. So every company has a target audience that they want to, as if they're giving a TED Talks, right? You've got 2,000 people in the room. Who do you want to be speaking with? And fill that room on LinkedIn or social. And now when you're conveying your story, you're really getting in front of an audience that matters. So I think that's something that's really helpful for companies.
Let's go back to your career.
Okay.
Okay.
If we must.
We must. Okay. So you sell vintage filings. You test out in the weight loss area.
We do. Weight loss area.
And then what came next?
We tested the weight loss area. We tested the fashion area. You've got exposure to the fashion industry. Absolutely. So we created this company called Lil Brims, L-I-L, Lil Brims. And yeah, big mistake. And so we teamed up with somebody that was in TV and media, thinking that would help us. And I remember Shai and I, we were exposed to this whole new world of fashion. There's this the big conference in Vegas, the Magic Show. So we went to that, and we were giving out these little brims. They were cool, really cool baseball type hats. And it was the same week as the NBA All-Star game. So my partner and I were playing blackjack or whatever, and we saw maybe it was Dwayne Wade or some big guys. And so we threw them the hat and said, hey, what do you think about this, right? Because if you could get some of those guys to endorse it or wear it, from that social standpoint, you're golden. And I think the guy looked at it and he's like, I'm a big guy. I'm not going to wear a little hat. And it was downhill from there. And we ended up having 100,000 hats sitting in a warehouse. And I mentioned that because, not everything is a success story.
Yeah.
And it was just all right. So got out of that business. then started V Corp, which was just nothing sexy or unique or patented, just good service in corporations. So when people want to start up a company, John's Pizzeria Inc. or LLC, and we ended up doing thousands and thousands of those incorporations and corporate services. And then we were bought out by a large conglomerate called Walters Clore, and that was the second part of the journey.
Wow.
So we just stuck with that formula. We created a company called VCheck, which did background checks and due diligence, and also grew that to over, I think, 130 employees. And for the first time, started the conversations with private equity firms, and ended up selling that to Sunstone Private Equity. And then for the last couple of years, been focused on VStock and share media.
Do you consider yourself a tech guy?
I am, like, if I can turn on my computer, it's a good day. Legit. No.
So you're a visionary.
I think I'm more of like a marketing type. My partner, I've always had partners in every business. And so that's something that listeners can always think about, what fits their personality best. Am I a solopreneur? Do I need a team around me? I've always worked well with others, whether, they were the salespeople, I was the operations guy, and then it's sort of over time flipped and I became the revenue generator, and others are great at operations and legal and compliance. So you have to know sort of where you fit into the equation. But I am not a tech guy. As a matter of fact, one of our recent companies called eSignature, which we sold, the main reason we sold it is because it was a tech-oriented type of business, and that's just not my forte.
You said something, and I want to ask you about it. Partners. Partners are a challenge for a lot of people who are entrepreneurial and have a business vision. What are tips you would tell somebody to look for in partners? Like you mentioned, I'm good at this person's good at that, but you still have to have a same vision, and you kind of have to fight out that vision. It's like, it's a form of a marriage in a very...
Absolutely. And it doesn't always work. And even if you find, like I said, one, like my partner Yoel right now, I mean, he is a self-proclaimed securities nerd, like professor. He loves this stuff. And I gave up practicing law for a reason, because I can't stand the contracts and the details and all that. So even if you find somebody that is complementary to you, I think that's the first thing to do is everybody, my former partner, Shai Stern, when we sold Vintage and V Corp and VCheck, he's Zig and I'm Zag, like just totally different. But my wife always gave me, and this is the advice I'll pass on to everybody else. So in the name of my wife, she said, always ask yourself, are you better with that partner or without? And so anytime, not that we ever had any arguments, but if I did with a partner, it would be, okay, I hear your point of view, but am I better off with you or without you? And if I was ever better off without, then I would have to go a certain route. Or if I'm always better off, I am better off with him, and so I have to get past this. And that's what's always worked.
Your wife is a very wise woman.
She is.
That's a line I use a lot in, whether I'm counseling someone who's running a business or whether it's in their private life. I say, only you can decide if you're better off with the person or without the person. And when it gets down to the fights, I say, well, you could be right, but is it more important to be right or to hold up the relationship?
Right.
Because there's a big difference,
right?
And I think that's something in partnerships that often gets missed.
It probably applies to clients as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some times where
Absolutely.
the client is just
wrong.
Out of his mind, crazy. But, again, am I better off keeping this client, then, I have the opportunity to laugh all the way to the bank and just make sure that they are satisfied and that we're doing our job correctly and we're providing them what they need, or not. Like, at some point, I'm sure it reaches that threshold where it's like, you know what, I think it's best if we part ways.
Yeah.
And it happens.
I think in the securities business, that's probably one of the most important decisions you can ever make, having represented 400
Wow.
publicly traded companies over 30 years. And, the biggest thing I found is to really trust my gut. And I didn't at first when I was younger and you're trying to get everything going. And then you have that period where you just think you're so great, nothing could possibly go wrong. So
Right,
you have all
right.
those, ego cycles that come into the mix. But then it really became like, whoa, I'm the face for this person. And I came in with my name and I'm going out with my name. And that's
That's it.
all I have. And I could take down a lot of people if I, get involved here where something's telling me I'm not comfortable.
You're right. And you have to trust your gut, and that's not always easy to do.
Right.
And I say to people, because a lot of what I try to do is just be a matchmaker, right? Just try to make sure that I'm paying it forward. I'm introducing people. Hey, you need to meet this fund, or I literally spend a lot of my day introducing people.
That's how I think my whole life has been
Right?
for 30
Just
plus
good
years
karma.
now. And it still is now.
And not everybody believes in it. And as long as you don't have any expectation, like I'm just going to make intros till I'm blue in the face. And
Yep.
eventually it comes back to you. But to your point, I think that in raising money in capital markets, securities, public companies, it doesn't matter. NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, the biggest element is knowing who not to do business with. Like just stay away from the bad guys, and knowing who to surround yourself with and who to be speaking with and who not to even go down that path with is a big deal.
It's funny. We've been talking about LinkedIn because you do a lot on LinkedIn. And myself, yourself, you have all these people who want to connect with you. And I started this policy where if someone wanted to connect, I would send a message back saying, I'd love to learn more about you, but I can't connect with you until I know who you are.
Interesting.
And why I started to do it was early on and I didn't really realize how LinkedIn worked. And what would happen was if someone connected with you, well, they could see all the people who you knew. And then I found out like someone would call me up. Let's say it's Seth Farbman, and he calls me up and says, so Diane, John Smith tells me he knows you.
No way. Really? Oh, that's terrible. Okay.
And that really unnerved me. I'm like, wow, this is kind of like I just opened up my phone book.
Well, you
to the
can
whole
hide
world.
those. You can hide your connections.
Oh,
so you can.
Okay, you're teaching me.
I will show you later. You can,
Okay, I
there's a
want
setting, and you can just hide your connections because
See, then I would accept more people
of course,
and get to
'cause
know
if you're
them
a
and pay
CEO
attention.
If you're a CEO or a sales rep, like my guys, shout out to Lisa and David. Like,
Yeah.
they've killed themselves for 15 years to develop those relationships. I don't know if they have it on connections or not, but yeah, you're right. 100%. In theory, like somebody can just start
I never knew
mining
that.
all of your contacts. And so, that's adjustable, but you're absolutely right. You do have to, sort of be comfortable with who your audience is and who your connections are.
Yeah, and it would be remarkable because early on I would let someone else manage it, like, and all of a sudden someone would call me up and say, can you introduce me to so-and-so? I saw them as a LinkedIn connection. I'm like, I don't know them.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, but they're connected to you on
Right.
LinkedIn.
That doesn't
I'm like,
necessarily mean anything these days, but 100%. 100%.
yeah, it's very interesting how all that works. Now, what do you do with people with LinkedIn these days? Because and tell me what you think about that as a platform compared to all the other platforms out there.
Yeah, so similar to you, my kids would be like, "Oh, Dad, like you're not on social," and I've always been on LinkedIn, and only recently expanded it to what you were saying before, where there are other platforms and YouTube, and I think my kids, which are of all ages, ranging from 15 to 29. Mostly the teenagers are rolling their eyes like, yeah, Dad, my friend said he saw you on TikTok last week. I don't handle
I've been there.
I don't handle my own TikTok. I was like, oh, okay, but
What was I saying?
yeah, I just give a guy the videos and then he posts it. But so I've always been focused strictly on LinkedIn, just because that's where the capital markets are, that's where the professionals are, and I'm more service oriented rather than product oriented. So if I was selling like a soda or a can or a widget or whatnot, I'd be more inclined, maybe more on Instagram. But really, what we just encourage CEOs to do is just to leverage the platform for content, graphics, updates. Because tell me your thoughts. you've worked with companies doing these press releases, right?
Mhm.
So now, even if you're a great company, you've got great updates and you've got, FDA approval announcements or whatnot, but those press releases have a time period between them. It could be 1 and then 6 weeks and then 8 weeks at best, right? So what are you doing with your audience for that 6 weeks in between each press release? And so I'm encouraging these people, give updates, give content,
Mhm.
even if it's like, hey, I'll be at this conference,
Yeah.
or here's a great article in the journal about whatever we do.
Yeah.
It's not about us, but it's
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
So, otherwise people are just putting up press releases and sitting back in between and not taking advantage of that audience that they're building.
That is such a good point. That is how I viewed public relations. My first company was the Investor Relations Group, purely because a venture capital bank, Paramount Capital, Lindsay Rosenwald, who I love, God bless him.
Blast from the past. Okay.
Yeah, but truly a guy who changed my life, and I will always be indebted to him for that. Always. He changed my life, bringing me in and introducing me to a world. And another humiliating moment, I swear, Seth, when he said public company, I'm like, oh, like delis? This is what I'm thinking. I can go in, must be public. That's how clueless I was when he brought me in.
Wow.
But he brought me in, I think, because I said I would get his office painted before a meeting with Don Drapkin and Ron Perlman on a Monday. And it was like on a Thursday, I said, I could get your lobby painted this weekend. You buy the beer. I know I can get a crowd in here.
That's so funny.
God's honest truth. And, but that, pushing into the social media and pushing it into the different areas and finding the areas that work. When I started to do PR, it was because I'd say, listen, yes, we can help you work on your quarterly announcement. We can help you on your year end. We can work with your presentation. We can help you book meetings. But you know what? PR is going to be where it's at, because now, instead of me saying, oh, you should meet, or Seth walking up to anyone and saying, hi, I'm Seth. If I say, you need to meet Seth. He is amazing at what he does.
Big difference.
And you should be talking to him because of XYZ. This is what he can do for you and your company. Big difference. And that's how I viewed PR. So I would say to companies, listen, if you can get in an article, if you can get interviewed, and you can take that, which is what my team still does today, and you can translate it into an article, and in your LinkedIn or wherever you just say, recently I was featured in this, I'm sharing it for information purposes only.
Right.
So you're covered as far as any endorsement of the article, but all of a sudden, now you're more searchable.
Sure.
And you're more searchable in that article.
Right. And credibility. And all the things
Because
that
quarterly announcements are boring.
They are.
What do you think about this change of the new plug to make them only once a year?
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it was
Really?
yesterday in the Wall Street Journal.
Wow.
I was very surprised to read. I hadn't known it either. They're calling it the long form disclosure group, and they're lobbying to make it that just once a year. And supposedly Jamie Dimon's behind it, and has
That's
said
funny.
this is something, it's a waste of time. We
And I
should all
saw
be
somebody
doing it.
just the opposite yesterday. My partner pointed it out to me, and I won't disclose the company itself, but this company just did a couple $100 million deal, and clients of ours, and they started filing with the SEC in a Form 8K, I think it was, or prospectus update, every tweet that the CEO puts out, and he put out like 15, 20 a day.
Was
and
he
then
doing that while they were doing the
I don't know, but then he basically
fundraising?
filed a prospectus update with every tweet in it. So he was filing with the SEC 15 to 20 times a day to correspond to his tweets, which was new to me. So I'm still digging into that.
I'm going to
was
think
interesting.
about that. Could be a really interesting marketing strategy. Think about how you are constantly
Maybe it is a
hitting
marketing
the ticker tape.
Every time, like he literally filed, I think within the last week, like 100 plus updates, which, whoever's his Edgar filing agent is probably
Making a
extremely
fortune.
happy about that. Yeah. But it was interesting. So, I'm always looking for what's next and what's gonna add value to clients. What is going to blend with regulations. People say what's next. Like I go to sleep every single night thinking about, okay, I've got this amazing audience of 1,000 public companies and hundreds of friends and colleagues and lawyers and bankers. Like, what else can I bring to them? And so that's the way I go to sleep every night. Not so exciting.
But it is exciting.
Yeah,
It
for
is
me it is.
exciting.
For
I
me
mean,
it
to
is.
me, I love work, and I have a feeling you do too. I mean, I love my family. I would not change a single one of them. I love them. They're delicious. But I love work.
You have to be passionate.
Let's
You have
talk
to be
about passion and work, because there is something to that passion, that get up, that want to do it every day. And
I just had this conversation with my daughter. She's my youngest is 15, and I forget how it came up, and I think her comment was something like, Dad, you work really hard. And on the one hand, I appreciate that acknowledgement, but on the other hand, I said to her, I'm like, do I really work hard? She's like, yeah, you work really hard. I'm like, I do, but I'm home if I want every night at 6, and I can do carpool 4 nights a week, and I can take you to piano practice. And if we want to go away for 2 or 3 days, I might enjoy being on my phone by the pool answering emails, because I enjoy that. But I'm not the work hard where I've got to be on the 6:30 train, which, a lot of friends of mine, they've got to be on the 6:30 train in the city. They leave. I wanted to play tennis with this guy because I was taking up tennis. And I said, well, why don't we play, any morning at 7:38? He's like, oh, no, I'm in the city by then. Okay. Why don't we play at 6:37, 8 at night? He's like, I usually don't leave the office till 9:30. That's working hard. So I'm grateful, every day, whatever challenges there are as an entrepreneur, and I do work hard, but I'm grateful of being able to manage the time on it.
It's so funny, because I always find myself thinking, yeah, I know it's work because I'm getting money for it,
Right.
but I can't imagine what else I'd be doing. And I'm kind of like laughing through my days. I almost some days I just can't believe I'm getting paid for
Right.
telling people, being the devil's advocate. I get paid for a lot. With perception analysis, I get to say to someone, well, you think it's a great idea for all these reasons. Let me shoot holes in it for the next hour. And I'm going to have come in with my research of, I'll assure them at the beginning just to cover everyone's ego. And at the end, yes, this was a great idea. But you don't want to be the deer in the headlights the first time an investor, or you put out an ad campaign and it comes back. So what are the things that might not be great? That's what I get paid for all day long in personal and professional lives. So I don't find that work. It's just like, I'm thinking about this in the shower. I'm thinking about this at breakfast. I'm thinking about it when I'm taking a walk.
Absolutely.
It's just the ideas pop up.
Even yesterday, I was at the H.C. Wainwright conference.
Yes.
And they had a great event. They had Sting perform, I think, Monday night. I did not go. They had George Bush yesterday.
Yeah.
So they know how to do it right. But I spent most of my day just speaking to clients and colleagues, but there were like 3 or 4 people that just, said, can I pick your brain? I have this idea for a business or this idea for a startup. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm like, I love this stuff. Like I encourage anybody to come up to me with ideas. I love listening to, well, how can we, how can you launch something? What are the issues? And, if I can, like you say, point, hey, maybe think about this challenge, or this might not be so good. But at the same time, encourage them. Yes, it's a great idea. It is. But yeah, I love new ideas.
Do you poke holes in them too?
I try to, because I wish somebody would listen. At the end of the day, there are plenty of naysayers out there, and sometimes you have to ignore them, and you have to say, hey, I don't care if you think this is a bad idea. I believe in it, and I'm going to move forward with it. But I wish that other people would have been forthright in pointing those issues out to me before I launched. Like I had another company that I thought it was a great idea, and I prospect like 100 people. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think this? Oh, I love it. It's great. Fantastic. Great idea. And then I spent 6 months and I develop it and I invest in it and we build the technology and we go to launch. And then I go back to those same people and they're like, it was a great idea. I didn't say I would pay for it. It was a great idea. I didn't say I'd become a client. It's like, well, then I wish you would have said that at the time and saved me the money and the time. But yeah, it's that balance.
About 40 years ago, I read a quote in a the book by Hugh Prather, Notes to Myself, and it
Okay.
cemented in my head as an insecure 20-something-year-old. And it was about criticism. And he wrote, and I'll paraphrase, that when you hear criticism, what you have gotten is critical information from someone. So you can take that critical information and decide what you might agree with,
Right.
or decide what you disagree with. But instead of looking at it as a criticism of yourself, if you look at it as critical information to be kind of extrapolated or determined or just impartially viewed as, well, yeah, that is a good point. I do that.
Right.
Or, well, they must be having a bad day because I don't do that. Or, no, I still think this is a good idea. It's an interesting way to look at criticism, which I think is important because I think candor is important. If you can view criticism and candor in a way that it's not an attack on your idea, it's let's just look at what you might not be seeing. Because think about it. Did all your greatest successes come when you thought you were a rock star?
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
And there have definitely been times where, like to your point, I've taken that, not criticism, but hey, maybe it's not as great of an idea as you think it is. Very recently, actually, just to share an avoidance route, is that I had this idea. You know, you've seen all these alcohol companies, which are very popular now, and you know, George Clooney and this one and that one and gin and Mark Wahlberg and they have all these like selling for $100, $200, $500 million. And I thought to myself, like, what does that business come down to? It comes down to that they are celebrities and they've got a tremendous audience, and pretty much anything that they sell, you know, The Rock, anything he sells is gonna produce. So I said, well, what's my audience? Not that I'm a celebrity or have anything like they have, but my audience, I was like, okay, my audience is public companies. So what if I had a drink geared towards CEOs, IPOs, Wall Street? So I said, I'm going to launch a brand, Wall Street Whiskey or Bull Run Bourbon. And I'm going to sell to all of the investment banks, CEOs. I'm going to get endorsements from NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange. And I was convinced this is going to be a home run drink. And then I started speaking to the professionals, and they pointed out, well, it is a great idea, but are you aware that like most drink companies will take 5 years plus to develop, and the profit margins aren't so great, and you know, whatever the statistics are, only 1 out of X actually make it. At some point I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna go for it. But so like we said before, not every great idea necessarily is a moneymaker.
Right.
So
it is funny you mentioned those alcohol companies. I remember reading an interview with Sammy Hagar at one point, you know, who had his own band for years. Then he was lead singer with Van Halen. And he said, best thing I ever did was Cabo Wabo tequila. Made more money on that than
I believe it,
else.
You know, but you have to,
Or maybe
you have to know your audience.
Maybe you have a video game and you like Tony Hawk saying, you know, I did all these moves, I did all these things, but it was that video game that made me my money.
Could be. So we'll see. We'll see what's yet to come, whether it's a drink or
Wall Street. You know,
absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
Get to this point, you know, get to go public or bring your first product to market, find out no one wants it, and you stock price drops.
I'm not done like throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks. You know, it may not be in the alcohol industry because again, I've sort of like been, you know, in a good way, I'm staying away from areas that I don't know. We want to launch something called Stock Clock, which is something that's brewing, because I'll just tell you this funny story. We had a guy, he had a warrant, and the stock was at like $30, and then he calls me on a Friday, and the stock, I think it was FDA approval, stock went to like $250, and this guy was like, I'm done. I'm going to make tens of millions of dollars. And he looked at his warrant agreement and it had expired 6 months earlier. Can you imagine? Like, can you imagine that moment of like, so I said, well, why isn't there any type of alert system? Like, hey,
brilliant.
30 days from now, your warrant is going to expire. You better, you know, do what you have to do. Or even like, as you know, a lot of stock that's issued is restricted. And after 6 months or 12 months, you can get that restrictive legend removed. Well, like you said, we've both got that file in the
Mhm.
bottom of our desk drawer, just filled with wallpaper certificates. If somebody said to me now, like, "Hey, do
It's
you know when it's
brilliant.
all expiring?" I'm like, I don't know. So we're gonna do a stock clock reminder system just to let people know. So I'm always just trying new things. I
You
think
know,
that's what you got to do.
that is such a great idea. When I
I
met my
appreciate it. I don't
husband,
know, but
I was few years into the investor relations group, and I remember he worked in the financial industry, and he said to me, how do you get paid? I said, well, we get a cash fee, and then I get this like paperwork. It's like a warrant or an option.
right.
Sometimes it's a restricted stock certificate. And he goes, and where do you have those? I'm like, they're in that filing cabinet
Exactly.
behind my desk.
Exactly.
He goes, do you have any idea what they're worth or what they're priced at? I said, I don't know. I'm so busy trying to get this business off the ground.
Right.
Trying to
Literally.
do a
And
zillion
I'm
other
sure that
things.
there are so many lawyers and capital markets
Just like me.
professionals. It's at the bottom of the drawer. And like every 6 to 8 months, you kind of like open it up, hoping that there's like a diamond in there. Like, oh, maybe I just didn't know that it's worth $1 million. So,
I didn't even do that. And he started going through the files, and then he would, convert it to shares and, do all the paperwork, because
Right.
it's a lot of paper. That's
is.
your next business. So first you set
It
the
is.
clock, and then you set up the business
Exactly.
to, get the
lawyer
restriction
and the opinion
off
letter and
with the
all that.
opinion letter
All
to,
that stuff. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a whole process. And I always say, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have our homes.
That's great. That's great.
Because,
It's a lot of paperwork, and it's just a question of being on top of it and leveraging technology today to, if I got a WhatsApp that said, hey, by the way, your warrant's expiring in 2 weeks, I'm like,
Brilliant.
oh, that's good to know. So we'll see. We'll see what's next.
Seth, this time, as I said, always goes too fast. So
Agree.
any parting words you want to give everybody right now? Because we're up.
I don't think so. I mean, this has been great. I love
has
this
been.
audience. I love this entire system that you have set up here in this environment here in the middle of Manhattan. Your energy is contagious, and I really appreciate the chance to be here and catch up.
I'm so glad we did this. Thank you for gracing me with your presence, literally.
Hardly, but
really,
thank you.
I mean it.
Thank you.
I'm Diane Grissel, also known as Silver Expedience. This is the Silver Expedience Perception Dynamics podcast. We're recording here in Manhattan Center, iconic place in the middle of New York on West 34th Street. My guest today has been Seth Farbman, and I learned a lot from him, and I've known him for 20-something years. So I know if you watch this episode, if you're thinking about doing anything, making your company grow, increasing your presence online, trying to get bigger in any way business-wise, he's a guy you're going to want to follow. Check out his LinkedIn, pay attention to what he's doing. There'll be all kinds of links below this episode where you can follow him and learn more. So thank you very much. Thank you, Seth.